So I have no slides. Basically, I have nothing to give you. We heard so many really scintillating words of wisdom, and I'm really grateful to have been able to be here with you all. So I thought, well, since from a Zen perspective, there is no meaning to impart. There are no answers to give you. Questions are so important. So I think, physics is really going in the right direction. No answers. And for a while now, physics, neuroscience, and I would say too, philosophy in the West have been informed by study of Buddhism. Of course, a study of Buddhism means nothing. The experience is what counts, as we just heard. So I want to give you a little investigation. I've titled this talk, 3 Questions and an Answer. See if you can figure out which is which. And I'm going to use 2 koans about Bodhidharma. Most of you know that Bodhidharma was the first ancestor of Zen, that he came from India to China in the early 6th century on a boat. And he was really advanced in years and in realization. And it's said that he was somewhere between 120 and 150 years old, and that this perilous journey took 3 years. So why did Bodhidharma come from the West? This is a question that we come upon in many koans. Why did he make that supreme effort to go from India to China? Well, in one way we know, kind of in a rational sense, that he went because his teacher asked him to go and share his wisdom. In the Eastern lands, the philosophical and ethical teachings of Buddhism had already been disseminated. So he wasn't bringing something new in that sense, but he was a revolutionary. And as many of you know, the key teaching ascribed to Bodhidharma was the transmission of a truth beyond words, beyond discourses, beyond doctrines, outside the scriptures, directly pointing to the human heart-mind. So consciousness, we might say, undefined by any system of belief, any system of investigation. Really out, throwing everything out there, beyond the horizon, beyond the confines of any structure. So he came at this particular point in Chinese Buddhist history when the Emperor Wu of Liang had been supporting a version of Buddhism that was focused on scholarly pursuits, accumulation of merit through virtuous behavior. And when the Emperor Wu heard that this highly realized venerable had come from India, he wanted to meet him. And no doubt, he wanted to receive some praise for his great efforts. So an audience was arranged. The emperor proudly told Bodhidharma, I have had sutras copied and translated. I have built temples, and I have been supporting monastic training. Tell me, what merit have I acquired? This is, of course, something that we encounter all the time in academia, right? I've attended such and such conferences. I have had all of these books published. I have students contacting me from all over the world for my brilliant insights, and I have received many awards. Tell me, how am I doing? There's this lurking question, I think, for all of us in one way or another. Evidently, the Emperor Wu had not studied, among all the books that he had been having translated, the Diamond Sutra, which states, Buddha teaches that all things are devoid of selfhood, devoid of personality. If a bodhisattva says, I will produce great Buddha lands, do not call this one a bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas who are wholly devoid of any conception of separate selfhood may be truly called bodhisattvas. Even if he had read those words, evidently they did not enter at a deep level. And I think we've all had this experience of reading a text and being moved by it to some degree and informed by it, but it hasn't been a life-changing experience. At some point that may happen. The same words we read again and again. The same chanting of sutras. The same thing. One day changes us. But this did not happen for Emperor Wu. Not yet. So what did Bodhidharma answer his question? This is your test. What did Bodhidharma say? What merit have I acquired?
None. No merit.
No merit whatsoever. Huh? What? Wait a minute. Let me give you all the things I've done again. I'll write them out for you. All the examples of my production of Buddha lands in China. And come on, aren't they worthy of being considered meritorious? So what's the problem here? Were the actions wrong? No, of course not. What was the problem? Of course, that the emperor was completely locked into a conception of separate selfhood, as the Diamond Sutra put it. I have done these things. I have written these books. I have made great headway in contemporary understanding of neuroscience. And none of us is a stranger to this conception of separate selfhood, which truly does contaminate whatever we do on some very powerful level. We're led around by this conception as though we have a nose ring and somebody is just, okay. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a tiny trace of self-consciousness. You're meditating and suddenly you realize, oh wow, I was just being breathed. There was no I there. I feel that breathing was happening and the I is gone. Oops. I'm back. And it's so subtle, isn't it? This is the motivation that we speak of. What is the motivation for the meditation? What is the motivation for anything we do? This is a very important aspect for contemplative practice. It's an important aspect for being human. It's very seriously important for the time we are living in. What is our motivation? Is it to get accolades? Or is it to be a beacon of light, luminosity, to really extend this mind of, we might call liberation, to all beings? So whatever we do, it's, I think, very important for us to notice this slight trace of ego entity as it arises, and it's subtle. More and more, the more we practice contemplative traditions, that subtlety is even more so. This little thing rears up, its little head, and we have to be ready to cut right there. Whatever the narrative and the unspooling of that autobiographical film, just cut. Just as Bodhidharma's words cut through the emperor's attachment to merit. So of course the emperor was startled by this, and perhaps he was in a state of some chagrin. So he challenged Bodhidharma. Okay, I hear you're supposed to be this, great teacher coming from India. What is the first principle of the holy teachings of Buddhism? Let's see who this person is who refutes the merit of my actions. Let's see what he understands. So what did Bodhidharma respond? Here we come to this conference. Vast emptiness, nothing holy. Emptiness? Emperor Wu is seeking something, not nothing. Some kind of tangible, concrete proof that this old teacher understood Buddhism. And then perhaps he would be able to refute it based on his own analysis. No, that's not really Buddhism. Let me tell you what Buddhism really is. Well, fast forward nearly 1,400 years to Soen Shaku Roshi, considered the first ancestor of Zen in America. And he was abbot of Engakuji in Kamakura and was invited to speak on Zen at the World Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in 1893. And then returned in 1905 at the invitation of a woman named Ida Russell, who became his disciple and thus the first American to take up formal Zen practice. So he came back and he gave a talk in San Francisco on that second visit, and the attendees were rather like a collective Emperor Wu. They expected this exotic Zen master from Japan to show his understanding of Buddhism, and in that way, perhaps give them something they could take home and frame. What did he say? I have studied Buddhism for more than 40 years and have preached the teaching here and there. But only very recently have I begun to understand it. Now I understand that what I had understood is that after all, I do not understand anything. It's really the most wonderful thing we can say, right? After all, I don't understand anything. And this is really what we just heard from Adam. This is where we arrive. I don't understand anything. To be able to open to this vast emptiness in which there is nothing that can be called holy. For as soon as we call it something, what happens? We give it a name, we give it a quality, and what happens?
It becomes other.
Well, you can say it becomes dead. It's, of course, reified. It's no longer something that informs our lived experience. It's something we put in a box, in a category. So these two first ancestors, one coming from India to China, the other from Japan to America, were speaking from their profound experience of vastness, from which no explanations can be given. Can't describe it, can't say where it belongs, how it fits. And so the words they used cut through the conceptual mind framework of their listeners. And their hearers were left with emptiness. They may have gone away, or Emperor Wu certainly was not pleased. They may have gone away thinking, I didn't get what I came for. I came for something, not nothing. There was no way to get a toehold. Vast emptiness, nothing holy. What kind of response is that? So as soon as we have some idea of a response or some kind of expectation about what the culmination will be of this exchange, it's as if we take a blank sheet of paper and on it we write, "This is a blank sheet of paper." This was Roger Corliss's wonderful example in his book, The Vision of Buddhism. That's what we do all the time. Life is, but we feel this compulsion to add commentary, to put it into categories, to view it as a theory. And so how about if I now explain emptiness to you, and then you can live your life more fully? Won't that be nice? So you see the futility of my even standing here? Bodhidharma's nothing holy went against what the emperor thought Buddhism was all about. The purpose of Buddhism was to become more holy than thou, holier than thou, right? That's the expression. And that word, what is Buddhism about? That word about is the real problem. Let me tell you about Buddhism. Tell me about the holy principle of your life. Tell me about your experience. What is your lived experience? Can you tell me about it? And as you were saying, this is the point of koans. This is the point of poetry, of myth, of all the ways in which people try to transmit directly, right? Beyond the scriptures, beyond doctrine, to really convey directly without that word about. This is it. Almost impossible using words, and yet we use words to say that. So, what about consciousness when we cut through the stories, when we cut through the narrative completely, when we have no assumptions? What is consciousness without any assumptions? Without any perceptions? Can I speak in terms of lived experience without my perceptions about that experience? Of course, I think in our day-to-day life we do imagine some special status that we can say is holy, is something to which we want to meet up and be transformed by. And of course, I think most of us feel some degree of distress about our current circumstances, and we think that somehow if we could just get the right answer or go to the right place, we would attain the holy principle. So this thing we hold aloft in our minds, we may call it holiness, we may call it enlightenment, whatever we call it, because we call it, we miss it. It's right here. We're always looking with some projection elsewhere. As Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not outside. The amazing, wondrous truth is that we're always tripping over the holy. As we fall, there it is, holding us. Emperor Wu, unfortunately, was not able to realize what gift he had just been given in this vast emptiness, nothing, holy. So what did he then say? A third question. Who the hell are you? Probably he didn't put it that way, but he really asked this question, all right? And there are many ways to ask the question. You can experiment in your own mind. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? How do you ask yourself? Huh? This is a key question for contemplative practice. Who am I? Am I a bundle of all my assumptions and perceptions? What is that final, tiny particle, quark, whatever we call it, that I'm continuing to move toward and finding nowhere? Who am I? Well, the emperor did not understand. The audience was over. Bodhidharma crossed the river and went into the land of northern Wei. Then Shiko, who evidently was quite a remarkable guy in the emperor's circle, asked, "Do you know who that was?" Emperor Wu said, "I don't know." So here again, I don't know. Many ways to say that, right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe in spite of himself, Emperor Wu was onto something. I don't know. For the first time in his life, I don't know. Well, Shiko said that was the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of compassion, the bearer of the seal of enlightened heart-mind. Oh, the emperor said, "Go get him. Bring him back." I was filled with regret. I missed it. All of us have this experience, right? Later on, oh, wow, that was something that could have really changed my mind. Maybe I can go find it. But what do we discover? Past, gone, right? No way. So Shiko said to Emperor Wu, "It'll do no good to send someone to fetch him. Even if everyone in the entire country went after him, he would not return. It's done." So we forget about it. That's it. Cannot go back. Bodhidharma went north to a mountain called Sozan and sat facing a tall cliff. This tall cliff, steep as his teachings. For 9 years he sat. Meditation, just sitting. And from time to time someone would come seeking his wisdom. And one of these people was a man named Eka, Niso Eka. Eka had been practicing Buddhism for about 8 years, but his mind was still filled with turmoil. And he came to Bodhidharma's cave really filled with psychic pain. It was the depth of winter, snowing. Eka stood in the snow at the mouth of the cave, begging, "Please, I need your help. Please teach me. My mind is not at peace. Please pacify my mind." Okay, we're all pretty well acquainted with this feeling, right? My mind is not at peace. So much is in the way. We're bombarded every day with all manner of distractions, too much information, all kinds of amazing things that we're listening to and trying to understand and cannot quite. And then we also fall into situations and circumstances that bring a lot of fear and negativity. What should we do? How can we take care of this? And we think, okay, well, that's reality. There's nothing that we can do about it. I'm just a negative person. Okay, so you get into this self-view, this identity with your emotions, particularly the negative ones. Most people don't walk around saying, "I'm such a happy person, that's who I am." Right? You go, "Oh, I don't know. I can't seem to make any, nothing works." We don't understand that, yes, nothing works. So, getting locked into this kind of, maybe you remember Winnie the Pooh, negative emotions like Eeyore. "Oh, that's such a nice piece of damp rag. Thank you for my birthday present. Just what I always wanted." We get locked in to these negative emotions because we identify with them. And yet, as the Dhammapada puts it, our lives are shaped by our minds. We become what we think. The linked verses of the Dhammapada remind us that it's our responsibility to change what we think, how we think. Everyone is the owner of her own karma. Everyone has the responsibility to purify and transform his karma. That's what contemplative practice is all about. Not just sitting there thinking, "Oh, it'll never be any better. I can't do this. I can't follow my breaths. My thoughts are in the way." Your thoughts are great. No problem with thoughts. We're so lucky to have thoughts. But we don't have to be owned by them. They're just passing through like emotions. Big clouds, sometimes huge thunderstorm, beautiful tranquil day. So it's pure attention that we need to return to. Not to something, not to attending to something, but just attending. This word attention and the corollary attending and tending are so interesting. Here we are. We're here to attend. All right? That means listen. It means be with. It means care for. All right? These are the Buddhas. We saw that quote yesterday. The Buddhas are caring for. That's what we are. Human beings becoming Buddhas through our attending. And so, of course, there's a lot of, we've been hearing so many interesting things about the study of the mind. And there's been so much research into the plasticity of the brain. And it all shows that we can change our minds, both at the level of consciousness and also at the physical level of the brain. You know, there are many studies that show that. Of course, mind and matter are not two. What we do, how we live our lives, is up to us. Most of all, we might say the most important point is that this can happen because all phenomena, including ourselves, are empty of any inherent substance. Fundamentally empty. Therefore not locked in any way whatsoever. Our conditioning makes us feel that way, of course. Our karma, whatever you want to call it, makes us feel as though this is the way it has to be. Not at all. No. And everything is impermanent, so whatever you are thinking you are informed by and cannot be out from under no matter what you do, it's already gone. You're late to the party. It's completely new. Hello. This moment. That's all we need. So, not to be enslaved by ignorance of the true nature of reality is emanating from this understanding of all is empty of any inherent or intrinsic substance, and there is nothing that is not changing right here, right now. However, here's the bad news. Changing the mind, training the mind, takes concerted, consistent, diligent practice. And it also takes courage. When we finally sit down and shut up and just surrender to the everyday holiness, nothing holy, then we're at the threshold of Bodhidharma's cave. But being at the threshold of the cave in itself is kind of terrifying. We see the difficulty we're in and we can't hide it. We begin to really see how the separated identity that we have come to think of as the self has left us feeling alienated and incapable of responding fully to the challenges of our lives. So we have to say, as Eka did, I acknowledge my own blindness, my blind spot, and with complete humility, I beg for help. With complete humility, I go to that next point of reference and see through it as it arises. So with true compassion for Eka, Bodhidharma responded to his plea for help. Get out of here. He thinks it's out there. The help he thinks is looking for is in someone else. Okay, if you think it's out there, go on. Go out there. But Eka was not to be discouraged. The snow kept falling. He stood in the snow. He continued to plead, please pacify my mind. Then Bodhidharma told Eka this very discouraging statement. The subtle and supreme teachings of the Buddhas can be pursued only by endless assiduity, doing what is hard to do, bearing what is hard to bear, continuing the practice even for kalpas, that's a long time. How can one of little virtue and much self-conceit dream of achieving it? It will end only in fruitless labor. Go away. Well, here's the wonderful thing. Eka didn't go away. Instead, he cut off his arm at the elbow and presented it to Bodhidharma. Manifesting what? Endless assiduity, bearing what is hard to bear, willing to continue for kalpas. Refusing to be discouraged by Bodhidharma's refusals, just as we must continue to refuse to be discouraged by those things that don't seem to add up. All of the lessons that we've seen just aren't going to make it, the end of physics as we know it, right? All the disappointing answers and outcomes of our lives. We have to have the willingness, the spiritual fortitude to do this kind of contemplative practice without any conditions, to undertake our lives without any reservations. Be willing to do what it takes. Okay. If it takes cutting, cut through the tyranny of the ego. Cut through whatever is rearing up in our lives that we feel impeded by. It's our misunderstanding that there is some kind of permanent substance there. Look through it, see it. Everything we've been constructing about who we are, what we need, and how we're going to get it, cutting through all our certitude, all our perspectives, all our concepts, and especially all our self-absorption. The great master Hakuin said, what is essential is a daring mind. And I think that's true whether you're a Buddhist practitioner or a practitioner of another contemplative path or a neurophysicist or a philosopher or any of the wonderful activities that we've been hearing about at this conference. We have to ask ourselves, why did Bodhidharma come to the West? All right? Not from India to China, but from Asia to right here, Dartmouth College. Why has he come here now? What is the question that's coming from our own hearts? What am I doing? To what am I devoting this precious life, this rare opportunity to be a human? So Eka presented his arm. My mind still has no peace. Please pacify my mind. And Bodhidharma answered, bring me your mind, and I will pacify it for you. Then Eka went into profoundly exhaustive search. This is the search all of us must undertake, no matter what the subject, because it all comes down to mind. What is mind? Eka went into vast emptiness. Then he came and he said, I've looked everywhere. I cannot find my mind. And what did Bodhidharma answer? There, I have pacified your mind. This is our journey, our project. And of course, Eka had 8 years of Buddhism, struggled mightily, and had shown his true desperation, his authentic practice, and his humility. And therefore he was able, at those words, to awaken. So each of us must do this kind of diligent, consistent, absolutely devoted practice for our lives. For our research, of course, but for our lives. We have to. And we have to ask, what is the mind? Who am I? Who is searching? Where do I come from? And find this truth that Eka found. Mind is nowhere to be found. Only realize and actualize this in your life. This present moment allows us to live the Bodhisattva vow. May I be a vessel of Dharma. May I liberate all beings from suffering.